Closers is one of 2 South Korean MMOs that I actually brought attention to before they were licensed for distribution within North America and Europe. I did Let's Play style videos documenting both my little sister Wiggy's and my slow progress through not only the Korean version, but also private servers for the game before NMAS finally licensed it and allowed for me to officially play the game translated legally into English. And after years spent away, I've finally come back to see if this game is worth investing time into in 2022. Hey, my name is STIX and welcome back to another episode of Is It Worth Playing? A video series where we analyze every facet of an MMORPG to attempt to come up with as an objective of an opinion as possible as to whether or not this MMO is worth playing in 2022. Today, we're taking a look at Closers. This is a cute, a wholesome... Am I gonna reap all the children? Is that what's happening? Look, I'm holding up the scythe. I'm literally gesturing the reaping motion. Oh! Oh, what's happening? Oh, God was right! Oh my God, I just reaped the children! Did you guys see? I reaped the children! Wait, what? Wait. What was that? Well, anyway, quick shout out to our patrons over on Patreon. This allows you to directly support us if you're interested. Every patron will have their name appear at the beginning of every single YouTube video, and you'll be immortalized in the MMO genre forever. Now, I last played Closers all the way back in 2018, and you know what, in retrospect, wow, it has been almost 4 years. I guess it explains a few things. Back then, there were tens of thousands of active players. Towns were filled with clones of your character. Local chat was spammed with gold sellers. You had to actually work towards obtaining gear. What a time to be alive. Upon my return, I created a brand new character, and there are a lot of characters to choose from now. Each character has their own faction affiliation. However, it really doesn't serve any purpose in my opinion. Character creation is non-existent, thus my comment about all the clones running around the towns. There is customization, however. There are outfits, there are hairstyles. You gotta make money somehow, right? And cosmetic items are one of the most popular methods with which to drain every last cent out of your cultured player base. Each character has their own unique story and their own unique starting area, although admittedly, some of those zones are shared. So, there I was, jumping into the game for the first time in 4 years, not knowing what anything did, or that I actually had an entire set of gear that allowed me to one-shot every single monster, including bosses, for the hours that I spent streaming this. Yeah, don't be like me. Make sure to click all of the notifications when starting a new game. More often than not, you'll be gifted with gear so powerful that it'll actually make you quit due to a lack of meaningful progression. And that's actually what kind of happened here. I spent over 3 hours doing nothing but clicking my abilities once each and massacring entire hordes of monsters. There was absolutely no challenge present whatsoever. You can see the drained look on my face, the sheer utter disappointment that I had having learned that the fun action combat that I once loved so much was now utterly pointless until, well, I don't even know when in the game the combat becomes more meaningful or more difficult. And I mean, don't get me wrong, I understand that the bulk of the game takes place at endgame, but Closers is the type of game that requires you rerun the same content in a vicious, repetitious cycle that is entirely unfulfilling and just not at all fun. Closers is a hub MMO, meaning that there are towns, there are cities, there are central hubs that players can coexist within. You can see players, you can interact with them, you can group up with them so you don't have to push through content alone. Progression takes the form of running dungeons. There's no world to explore, you run instances. These instances consist of a couple different rooms with the same monster type, complete with a boss encounter towards the end. These instances take a few minutes to complete each. Now imagine completing dungeons for hours, where you do nothing but hold your right arrow key to move horizontally and cycle through a few different AoEs bound to your WASD keys. If the dungeons were varied, that wouldn't be so bad, but here, they send you through the same dungeons repeatedly across several different difficulty levels, where the only difference is how long the dungeons take, because they increase the boss's HP exponentially, drawing out the encounters. So in essence, you're rerunning the same dungeons repetitiously, engaging the same single monster type for hours at a time, all by yourself. And for a new player, this is not the experience that you want, and is likely not the experience that's going to grip you, to retain your attention long enough to really get to a point in the game where you get to experience that better content. Thankfully, the combat is a saving grace, to a degree. Since you'd spend roughly 95% of your time in combat, and the other 5% skipping all the text the game is so cluttered with, it's a good thing that it's not only highly fluid, but also incredibly flashy. Interestingly, you move your character with your arrow keys as opposed to your WASD keys or your left mouse button. This is something that I don't really see done in the MMO scene, and I totally understand why. It's really clunky having to move your right hand from the arrow keys over to your mouse and back to the arrow keys to move and then to click things. There are plenty of abilities that you can learn, giving you a little in terms of individual class identity, and you're capable of leveling every ability up. Honestly, I never have any idea what I am doing in any of the games I play when it comes to distribution of my skill points or even my stat points. So I always end up YOLOing it and hoping for the best. And you know what? It has not let me down yet. Graphically, Closers utilizes an anime aesthetic. Character models look stunning, they always have. They honestly possess some of the best looking characters you'll find in an anime MMO. Better than PSO2, better than Aura Kingdom, better than Soul Worker. These characters are incredibly well incredibly well developed. Oh god, there's really no way of saying this without it coming off as Unfortunately, the rest of the game is pretty basic. When you have characters that look as good as these characters do, and you have combat that is as stunning as is present within this game, and then everything else just looks so plain, so ordinary, so bland, you're left with the sense that they really just didn't care much about the world itself. And again, like, I'm well aware that the world is not the focal point of the game, but it really wouldn't have hurt them to put a little more effort into it, both inside and outside of the instanced dungeons. Unfortunately, outside of the intro to the game, I felt as though the narrative was pretty empty. You're an agent, you go and do this, you kill that, you talk to that person. It's about what you'd expect out of a side quest in an MMO, not the main scenario. I attempted to read some of it, but I just felt like it was so unimportant and pointless that I ultimately ended up skipping it. And I'm a massive fan of story in my games. If there's no story, typically I skip the game. I need to feel a sense of connection, to become enthralled in what's going on, so I remain interested in playing. This is something that Final Fantasy XIV has managed to do, and has managed to keep me playing for years. In terms of content, there's, well, there's a plethora of dungeons to run. The game is literally just one large dungeon adventure. There are raids, although I've never actually participated in one. I don't believe the population was ever really large enough to support raids of this scale. There's PvP, although, again, I never participated in it because, well, I didn't even know it ever existed. I had to Google this to verify it did, and apparently it does, so. But given there are 70 people online right now, I'm gonna go ahead here and speculate that it is not popular enough to really warrant even investigating. At the end of the day, Closers has changed quite significantly from what it once was, and not in a good way. This used to be filled with players, and while it's impossible for any game to truly weather the test of time, it's sad to see everywhere I went completely empty. I found it awkward being just thrust directly into the game at almost level 70 with no understanding of where I was, what my abilities did, and what gear I had. I wasn't instructed to equip my gear. I had to manually redeem it from the mall after someone in chat told me that it was there. And mail is something that I honestly forget to check when starting new games because I never anticipate anything actually being there. Seriously, like, who's gonna be mailing me? Having to grind the same monsters within the same instances over and over was something that I wouldn't wish upon any new player. It's unenjoyable, it's unintuitive, it's uninspired, it's unbelievably boring. There is not a single thing outside of the waifu bait that I would say truly stands out about Closers anymore. When it was released 6 years ago, sure, maybe, but there is no question in my mind as to why this game is dead. And yes, with 100 people actively logged in during peak hours, yeah, this game is definitely dead. I don't think any amount of work could save this from being worth it when there are just better alternatives out there, like Dungeon Fighter Online or L Sword, Maple Story, PSO2, or Soul Worker. Is this the greatest MMO? No, this is not even close to being a contender for that title. Honestly, for an anime MMO, this game has some pretty damn fun action combat. Graphically, the character models were incredible to look at, but everything else was flat and uninspired. The narrative started off strong and then just kind of disappeared. Even though I'm sure there'll be the odd person in the comment section that argues that point, the world is, well, small and empty. There's no reason for it. You might as well just queue for content from a small overview of zones. It has about what every MMO has: dungeons, raids, PvP, a whole lot of dungeons though, almost to a ridiculous level. I just wish so many of them were not copy and pasted. Honestly, I ended up rating this a little higher than I'd originally thought I would, but that is mostly due to the character models and the combat. Admittedly, Closers is a very basic hub MMO. It doesn't really provide anything worth playing. There are alternatives that offer everything that this game does, but better combat, better graphics, better worlds. I loved this game. This might be one of the games that really put our channel on the map, and it's a shame to see it end up where it is now. But every good thing eventually comes to an end. And with Closers' population as low as it is, it's really only a matter of time before it sunsets as well. I guess this genuinely might be the last time I or anyone ever really plays it. Now, if you're interested in my thoughts on other MMOs, you can go ahead and click this video over here, or if you're interested in a list of MMOs that are confirmed to be coming out in 2022, you can go ahead and click this video right here.